It's a one-horse race.
Uh, what do you mean one horse race? What does that mean? One horse race. In other words, you think we're going through the motions, the incumbent is going to win anyway?
Absolutely, James. Compare this election to 2021, for instance. The energy around 2021. Now, I don't know where your office is, Anaguru. I want you to move around your neighborhood and count the number of campaign posters for Mr. Chagwani that you're going to see there.
Surprisingly, they're not as many as they were the last time, actually, come to think of it.
You go to the central business district, which is supposedly the seat of, power. Outside campaign posters that are printed by MP guys who are running on his ticket and then they put him there. How many of his own campaign posters are you seeing? Now drive 40 kilometers outside Kampala and tell me how many you're going to see. Recently, I was in Port Poto and I didn't see a single one. You go to Bushenyi, you struggle to see one. You go even to the north, you struggle to see one. Really, like what's going to now? His party, I suspect, it does not have the kind of financing that it had in 2021. It also does not have the excitement that it had in 2021. Airports of Wales, charisma, and all that stuff was there, but the novelty has worn off. And one, for no fault of his own, people sometimes move on. They get bored and they really, need the next excitement in town.
So Anthony, I feel like there's several layers to this. On one hand, there's a question of voter apathy. It could just be people aren't as invested in this race as they were the last one, because I guess the novelty is gone. You know what I mean? The first time is always a charm, right? It was new, it felt fresh, but maybe it's understandable that the energy may not be exactly the same, even though I'm sure there is still support. But secondly, on your point about the resources, I've been meaning to ask you about this because I know you and I have talked about sort of political activism, especially from those who would be opposed to the government. And in our running battles with the activists, we frequently brought up how there were financial incentives involved. And in fact, it is true that a lot of money was going into civic activity, political activity, and some of that money did get funneled to, political parties. Given the restraint we've seen in the monies that are flowing in from especially USAID, which now we know doesn't exist for the most part, I've been noticing how the streets have been silent for the last 6 months or so. Neither a whisper on the streets. Whereas whereas you would think at this time of year there'd just be nothing but noise on the streets, And it just seems to me that the closure of USAID and perhaps its related organizations has had a powerful effect on the degree of activism, and in particular activism of the kind that is sort of challenges ruling regimes. You're really seeing that subside, and I wonder if that is related to what you're describing, which is potentially the lack of resources you're seeing being funneled to certain opposition elements who would otherwise by this point of the campaign would be engaging in so much publicity and so much activity. They are still carrying out activity, but nowhere to the scale and extent and impact of previous election cycles. So do you think there's a connection between that, the resources part, USAID, and any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we used to say this, James, and a lot of the stuff that we thought we said in each other's inboxes, and very little of that made the key air and public spaces. But we predicted this. What we were seeing was rented citizen agency. And then that rented citizen agency was positioned to challenge organic voices like yours and mine that rely on their own force of will and own financing to come into the marketplace of ideas and say, you know what, we need to change this in a bipartisan way. But if I'm paid to demonize one side and say the government is bad all the time because I know the guy who signed my check wants to hear that, I'm going to then define corruption only within the guardrails of government. Guardrails of government. And then you'll see a major political party come around and give tickets, political party tickets, to a guy just because he is the brother of the party president. They had him a ticket in a constituency that he didn't even come from. They come around and one person campaigns to be Kampala City Mayor, MP for women. They get her and put her in a constituency she didn't apply for. They come around and say, you know what? Oh, we're part of the Uganda Parliament exhibition. We did a lot of the research that backstopped that work. We're involved with other partners in there. And they get this Mpuga guy and demonize him and destroy his name for eternity for quote unquote corruption. Court comes around and says, no. This is a bad look. And I agree, it's a bad look. He got that money, but it's perfectly legal. Then they get the guy, the LC5 chairman from PG, who confessed to selling jobs for money. Confessed.
Okay, so if your point is
not every funder that never called out because the funder does not want to see that. So now that
when you say the funder, I don't understand. When you say the funder, who do you mean?
I may not say, oh, USAID. I may not say, because I don't want to dampen those guys. I'm just saying the influence of Western money in our politics distorts what would have been organic conversations by the citizen. Will it ultimately
You're right. You're right. And to be fair, I think the same argument can be extended to also how money that the government receives distorts the same. Because let's be honest, a fair criticism I've heard from opposition is, don't complain to us that we get money from Westerners for activities when the government that oppresses us also gets money from these same donors, which they also funnel into their politics, either directly or through monies that are misappropriated through corruption, which then finds its way into sort of potential political activity on the streets. So it would seem to me that everyone's playing this game.
Yeah, James, I'm not going to come here and defend the NRM government's use of money in politics. Corruption is how this country is run. That let that sit with you. The Speaker of Parliament went to the eastern part of the country and told Iran, where she was campaigning for the president of Uganda and Sirwani, and say, you guys, we people in case of voted for Museveni. That's why we have 5 to 10 ministers. We also, she didn't completely have the bank of Uganda.
Brazen. It's so brazen. It's unbelievable. No shame.
What should the Badiso say? Corruption is how you hold
but still.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
So let's talk about the energy. How much do you think is related to diminished voter interest versus simply the lack of resources that would be required to gin up the excitement that we might have seen in the previous cycle?
There's two things that we are not paying attention to. Yes, Mr. Chagulanyi is a very charismatic figure. He's genuinely that. He's brave. He has led a movement of young people to fight against the machine. He has lost many comrades. It is worth admiration. But he's also not a lifelong learner. Like when you listen to his speeches now and the speeches in 2021, there's no growth there. If you sat down in Mr. Chagulanyi and try to debate his manifesto with him, you're going to get platitudes. If you corner him now, I want you to go and look, when is the last time he actually held an interview like this, impromptu, and sat before a journalist and had an in-depth conversation that doesn't rotate around Museveni should go, we are oppressed. If you want
Some could say that it reminds me of the criticisms that are sometimes levied against Democrats, because it would almost appear as though the entire Democrat platform is Trump is bad, Trump is bad, Trump is bad. Now, that may be true, but that's not what's going to get you votes. Like, you have to have a positive vision that you are presenting to your constituents to have them consider those in order to vote for you, not just saying the other side is bad, the other side is bad. And, to your point, there is a sense that too much of the discourse is about how the government is bad, the government is bad. The problem is most people agree already. So you're not really telling them anything new. No one disagrees that the government has issues.
The awkward stuff. So then guys are going to be like, okay, you found out this. What are you going to do for our healthcare system? Your manifesto can't say, oh, you know what? We're going to go and increase the healthcare budget to levels of the Abuja Declaration of 2001.
Okay, so I did take a look at the NUP manifesto, and I just thought I'd just share some basic points that I was able to glean from it. So essentially, the theme is a new Uganda now. They're looking to have the country have a reset where we restore constitutionalism, rule of law, human rights, where we overhaul current governance and economic systems to be more equitable. Among their priorities is political reform and constitutional rights, restoring presidential term limits, age limits, reducing executive power over judiciary, ending of trial of civilians in military courts, free political prisoners. That, I think, are very important issues. I support that. Stronger protection for human rights, gender equality is non-negotiable. I mean, that's standard stuff, really. Corruption, waste, and governance. They're looking to downsize the cabinet, reduce the number of MPs. They want to cut salaries and redirect savings to essential public services. How do you think that agenda will be met by NUP MPs? Are they going to be pleased that their flag bearer is looking to reduce the size of parliamentarians, the number of parliamentarians?
You think that is will vote for Thanksgiving? Yes, please. Have they demonstrated? Have they demonstrated?
He might ignite a revolt.
Have they demonstrated in the way they shepherd the little resources they have that they have the ability and the will to fight corruption? They're just using corruption as the way to purge. And I don't want again to dump on them, but anyway, we can get into what they're suggesting they're gonna do. Free political prisoners. I will tell you, James, from post-independence Uganda, every new government has had to contend with the issue of political prisoners. Every new government, even when Amin came in, he had to free political prisoners. Obote 1, Obote 2, President Museveni. Even when President Museveni is bleeding after 45 years, we are going to have freeing political prisoners being part of the major agenda. My question is why? We're coming to 70 years post-independence. Why do we still have this problem? He said he's going to scrap PDM, James. Have you looked at the numbers? Yeah, so if he comes and says, I am going to ban PDM, a program, admittedly, it's not very well run, but it's a program that, if well implemented, can actually drive hundreds of thousands of fellow citizens out of poverty. I look at the numbers here in recent now. These guys have committed close to 3.2 billion shillings to this program. That has reached, they disbursed around 2.8 trillion. The program has reached 2.896 million. Of course, these numbers are subject to, verification. But close to 3 million Ugandans have benefited from this program. And most of these are the rural poor. So I do not know who his strategist is to say, you know what? In a society where we're seeing all these high rolling politicians making out like bandits, this 1 million shillings that they are getting as crumbs off the table, he wants to take away and in exchange give us Makerere degrees. I thought you said the elite and their education don't matter. It's us who matter. So it's very typical to square that. It's just political amateurism. I'm hoping he will clean
But
up.
hang on, I think the economic policies are a bit ambitious. So in their manifesto, NUP is saying that they're looking to create 10 million new jobs by 2032 via manufacturing, tourism, sports, and the creative economy. They want to boost value addition factories to process raw materials locally to improve the incomes of farmers. I don't think that might stray too far from what the current people might be proposing, but nonetheless, if it is an area of focus that they are looking at, then I think it's important. 10 million jobs, 10 million new jobs by 2032. That'll do a lot for the people here. You don't think so?
James, when you look at the URA tax register, and you look at how many Ugandans have a TIN, last I checked, they were under 1 million. I don't know the quality of jobs they're going to get, but these guys are promising to actually double these jobs, or maybe multiply them by 10 million, by 32.
That's assuming AI hasn't destroyed all the jobs that there could ever be.
If they are not investing in grassroots mobility, upward mobility of the last mile citizen. And for me, a lot of these manifestos, even NRM manifesto, these are like, to quote the affiliate general when he was responding to our guide, they did a high sounding nothing. A lot of this.
But come on, listen. I feel like
for me they have it's the bigger question.
Yeah, but how is this different from Museveni's manifesto? If you've read Museveni's manifesto,
And I'm saying it's
right,
not.
and the breakdown of all of the points.
With President Museveni, James, we're coming down to, does his manifesto really matter anymore? We have 40 years.
See, that's the thing. So I think the assumption of most potential voters is they're probably giving us more of the same. And there are those who like what they have currently and probably would not mind it continuing. And then obviously those who don't like it and would want to see a change. However, I think not when it comes to the question of change, people aren't really looking beyond changing the person. Because when you examine the policies, the policy platforms of these various parties, especially say NUP, whose policies we're looking at here, there's really not much of a departure. And to your point, yeah, it does sound like the more sort of generic kind of policy proposal you might have, boosting tourism, boosting manufacturing. Like, I don't think there's a single politician who wouldn't have something of that sort on their manifesto. So it looks to me like for most people, the only change they're seeking is in who's running things. And maybe these all this analysis we're trying to do of the manifestos might be kind of moot. Maybe people don't even really care.
So the question that's going to come down to is, who has a better ground game? There's something we call the Republican coalition. If you go back, James, to the 60s, when Obote was still popular in Buganda, he never needed to quote many parts of the country. He knew, I have the north, I have the east, I have Buganda, I'm going to win as a counter. Then he loses Buganda. What does he do? Turns on a charm offensive in the west, turns on a charm offensive in the east where he comes from, promises to move the capital city there, goes north, consolidates his support, and squeaks his way to a win. They say he rigged, but I think that's one of the most organized elections in the history of our election, the 1980 election. Now, here, what has President Museveni done? He's poured a lot of money in PDM in Buganda. He goes and supervises these things himself. He has spent almost a year on a national tour for PDM. He's in his voter base, so he has like a consolidated base of 3 million voters, which is really, if you go back to 1996 to now, almost the vote total of opposition candidates, all of them combined, really. So he's starting the thing with an assured basket of votes. Do you see him losing, say, Teso? No. Is he going to lose Acholi? No. You know why? I once talked to, I don't think I'm at liberty to say this. I'm going to talk about a conversation I had with Mao. But anyway, what he did, what the president has done, yes, there was some atrocity by the government in the north in the 90s and early 2000s. He has come out and has made an effort to placate the north. So today, genuinely, do you think Mr. Chagulanyi can win the north? Do you think he can win in Abil? He can win Fagnoja? Do you think he can win West Nile? The places is playing at is a regional presidential candidate. It's central. Looking at Buganda, and the hope in NRA is this man is going to fight him to a draw. So 50-50 or 50-60. 40-60. If Mr. Chagulanyi takes 60%, in Buganda, Museveni will be happy. Then you get to Busoga.
So,
Rebecca Kadada feels it should be slighted, should be had done by the angry, she's on the fence. He will fight out to the 60-40. Then it comes to Bogisu, Bugweri, that area, maybe fights 50-50. And he cleans the table elsewhere. That's why when you look at that table, CNN and these media networks in the West, they have all these electoral marks. If you try to play out with the Ugandan electoral map, you will understand why President Museveni's campaign is extremely bullish about the upcoming election. And when I say this, people will say, Tony is pushing propaganda. But I see that man actually getting higher than 68% this time because of how he has played the chessboard, the political chessboard. And now, do you notice that, curiously, security forces are trying their best not to beat people? Why do you think that's the case?
okay, aren't you sounding like a propagandist now?
No, I'm not.
Like
James,
a paid shield for the party.
No, compare this election. Why do you think they're not doing it? Because you're going to reawaken that force of resistance. The people who are in latent mode, they're cheering. They're suddenly going to wake up and say, you know what? Oh, we're still faced with the dictator. Let's come out and fight. Let's organize.
Or you could say, or you could say that. Actually, the argument I would make is if we're not seeing those sorts of altercations between political supporters and security, it could be that there's been a scaling down on the level of activity, right? So I haven't heard of too many sort of events, too many activations on the streets that would require some kind of intervention of police as we might have seen. Not required because anything wrong is being done, but required as in it would be used as an excuse or justification to intervene and to disperse people. You're not really seeing a lot of that. And so what I'm saying is the degree of police harassing voters could be correlated, or at least the seeming reduction of that could be correlated with the reduction in the amount of engagements and activations we're kind of seeing by the various political actors on the streets, to the point we're making earlier about how the energy seems to be lower this time. Could it just be that? And maybe as we go get closer to the elections and there's more activities, there is a higher likelihood of police to potentially intervene to either thwart the activities of some of these groups.
Yeah, now, interesting you say that. The lower activations are going to be one. I don't think the National Unity Platform has enough money to actually, as much money as they had in 2021. And it shouldn't be by accident that around the time Parliament was passing the redone UPDF Act, they also passed an act of Parliament that actually cut off financing to NUP. When I brought it to people's attention at the time they passed that bill, NUP leaning people just insulted me. I told them, you're entering a situation where your funding is going to be sequestered. And that's exactly what's going to happen. You now have the Secretary General of NUP writing letters every week, begging to sign up for this iPod thing that they initially said they could belong to. And because they want access to the money to finance their campaign. So they're in a situation where the incumbent government, they want to compel the incumbent government to finance his own opposition, which he will not do. They will get the money, all right, but maybe after the election. So they're taking the steam out of them. So it's been a very tactical play by NRM because it looks like for them, they exist in a campaign mode all the time and they have an endless split of resources. So NUP and all these opposition politicians are facing a hiding to none. Our guy from
Okay, but
Galama Fabi, we even laugh at that joke. He's doing nothing.
yeah. But I do have fundamentally an issue with even having a discussion about tactics and which political parties or groups might have a better ground game. How can one make an objective assessment of that when we are in a kind of country where we kind of expect things aren't straightforward, you know? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is an African country. This is an African country. We don't even know if we can trust polling, pre-election polling. A lot of people don't trust actual election polling. In other words, what sense can we even make of numbers in a place like this full of so many irregularities to be able to say one group had better ground game somewhere as compared to another? Now, I haven't visited the whole country to know what kind of activations are going on in places. However, where I can agree with you is that I do feel that the energy generally is low, not just for NUP, but across the board, even within RM. And there's this, a lot of, if there's any fire, it's within a few circles on social media. But outside of that, everyone just seems chill and uninterested as compared to the last cycle.
So the thing is, NRM has filled their ranks with, how do I say this delicately? A bunch of incompetent people, a bunch of Nepo babies who are there because, they know someone or they were born of someone or they are, that kind of stuff. But it still has solid political actors in there. Now, those are the ones that you're probably seeing activating one pocket of support, activating another there. The way they run their campaign, they have what is a toothless and very heavily underfunded secretariat. Then they have the president with deep pockets of money in the middle. Then they have volunteer groups with the business community, people who are benefited from patronage, people, they bring pools of money in there and then they run a show. Each of those is going to almost like run independently. But the sum of those parts makes for a very unpredictable, a very solid political game that then is backstopped by the military and the police. So they will win those elections, actually. But then they will not take chances. There will be some rigging, there will be some intimidation, they'll do it. So the people have read that and they're like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is an inevitability. Let's do self-preservation. President Museveni is most likely not going to come back after this election.
That's what we thought the last time, though. That's what we thought.
Biology. I do not think President Museveni is going to be 86 and he'll be running for an election. So chances that he's not going to come back. Now, smooth political actors will say, oh, let him get whatever, get 80%, 70%, he will get it. Now, after that, keep your powder dry and organize after that. Even in his own circles, I'm sure there are people who are eyeing that seat outside this sun, who is a front runner, who are eyeing that seat and saying, we'll organize somehow. And when he leaves, we'll position ourselves to take over. I think that's a smarter political play, to be honest. And even the public has read it. They are not daft. There's people who are going to vote for President Museveni for the first time. Not because they do not like Mr. Chagulanyi, but because they have just made peace with the fact that, yes, he's put money in the poor communities, PDM. He is actually making a solid case as to why he's better than this guy. let's get rid of.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I share your same degree. I'm not sure I share your same degree of optimism with regards to
Your
whether it
security
is on the
guard.
basis whether it is on the basis of policies that people might feel compelled to vote, for this president. Like I said,
It's
this is
not.
Uganda.
It's
This
not.
this,
It's
this is the
stability.
this is the country of a vote in exchange for a kilo of sugar. All right. So when you
Yes.
say money has trickled down into communities, is it through government programs or is it through this sort of cultivated system of patronage in which people pledge alliance in exchange for sometimes actual cash, or if not, opportunities and other jobs and things of this nature? That's why I'm saying, how can I even assess whether it is on the basis of the merits of the policies that people may vote for this government,
I'm not
this
making that
regime, as
argument,
opposed
James.
to.
Not, hello, I'm not making that argument.
What's your argument?
The argument I'm making is people are resigned to the fact that one, President Museveni is gonna win. Two, there's some money he has put in the 3 million people who have benefited from PDM. We, the elite, can say it doesn't work, but for them, they are getting tangible cash and they're seeing some progress. So for them, that's a win. Three, there's the business community that will say, look, January comes and this guy is not in charge. What confidence do I have that these other guys are going to hold the ship together? They have to. Who runs the army? Do they know? Are they going to suddenly be accepted? Come in here, Bombo. We're welcoming our new commander-in-chief. Do you think that the army is getting ready to welcome a new man? Do you conceivably believe that? Of course not. So then the business community will read that and they're like, you know what? Continuity purposes, we're going to funnel money into campaigns that support this guy, keep him going until we see a steady transition. Sadly, President Museveni has not prepared this country for a life after him. I mean, he's a politician, so selfishly, he might not have an interest in creating that kind of society. But we are here. We cannot speak biology. He's running for this term. He's going to win it with so much ease. I can tell you that.
But
And on what basis are you saying that? Are you saying
that?
that because you think, based on the success of his policies and why people may want to continue the legacy of it, that it is on that basis he will win, or is it because you think the opposition are facing challenges that are making it difficult for them to operate at the same level of energy as they did in 2021? So in other words, is this a case of
your purple?
Yeah, so I mean, why you seem to have you're not willing to grant that people may be interested in seeing some kind of change. Surely you must understand people are fed up of all the corruption.
Everyone wants change. Everyone wants change. I'm sure even February 7 he wants to see change.
Does he really? I wonder about that, but see, that's the thing. Should you not acknowledge the aspirations of people who wish to see a different caliber of leadership? Why do you? It seems to me like you're undermining this. You're kind of stepping on it. Why do you not want to uplift the people who may want to see a different future for their country?
James, you and I have never been known for holding hands, getting together, and singing Kumbaya. We are known for speaking facts as we see them. This is what I see on the ground. When you travel deep north, recently I was in the mountains of Bugisu. I was in the communities talking to people. These people had never been the kind who will say, straight up, I'm voting for Museveni. Now they're like, you know what? He's done us bad on this and this and this, but we believe we need change. But what kind of change does this one represent? And to the extent that they're not getting that answer, and you yourself said it in reference to President Trump, that they're like, yeah, this guy says he wants to grab women by the pussy. That's abhorrent. But then these guys are expecting us to vote not for them, but against them. Ultimately, humans are about self-interest. We don't go to battle to protect someone else first. We go to battle to get something. We fight for something for ourselves. So it's really against human nature to ask people to vote against someone as opposed to asking them to vote for you. All right. So that can only go so far. So
Yeah.
Anthony, name for me 3 things you respect and appreciate about the opposition, whether it has to do with their policies or the way they're operating. Surely there has to be a few things you can see them doing where you feel like, yeah, that's what they're doing is good. Maybe the way they're energizing and impacting the youth and inspiring the youth is a good thing.
I'm sorry if I come up as a gloom merchant for the opposition, but men and women.
Because you're not, because to me, it's like you're going to struggle to beat the allegations, right? Because anyone that sees this is just going to say, that guy, we know that guy. We know his deal. That's what they're going to say.
This is rooted in reality. Everyone who says, oh, deal, has failed to ever point to any financing that have got outside my own pocket. Every one of them, even people I used to sleep with, they speculate. And then activists.
Well, I mean, to your credit, to your credit, your professional work is, is public knowledge. No one can dispute the gains you have made.
The work we do at
throughout your career.
Speaks on itself. The results are there. You can't attack the work.
You created your own mega business, successful business. I mean, that's all open. Everyone knows that, and there was no need for government to get involved for you to be beholden to them in any way.
Yes, but I do not want to be judged on guardian success. I didn't build that alone. I had staff, I had a vehicle, I had all that stuff. I get all the credit. I don't understand why. But I need to leave that out of. I want to be judged on my contribution in the public space. What have people like Tony and the guys at Public Square brought to the public space? What campaigns have we led and what results have we had? We brought a business mindset to public policy, and you can see that we do have tangible results at the end that people will not want to respect because they do not agree with your politics or quote unquote safe corridor, where you said, you know what, I may not agree with whatever the NRM government is doing, but I respect them enough to have a conversation and drive progress for society. I do not look at myself as an extension of the opposition or NRM. I look at places in the public space for the public good. That includes anyone who breathed yellow, red, blue, purple, magenta, whatever color. I do not care. So that's the thing. And if people are not yet used to that, most of us exist in the center. A lot of fringe figures are the ones you will see on opposite sides shouting themselves hoarse over someone has done X, Y, Z. So we need to normalize those kinds of conversations that a lot of the activists that used to say, you went to State House and saw the president and all that stuff, were cheering for William. But she came out a few weeks ago and said, yeah, I talked to President Museveni regularly. We talk about the Kaiwaya.
And opposition people got so mad. Like they were expecting her to just sort of really be rude about it and be very hostile. And yet she's like, yeah, but he's my president.
Exactly. And for me, that's my approach.
I don't have to like him, but he's my president. So all due respect.
You have to respect that. The office of the president, when you go, and when I went to State House to talk about corruption, guys were like, oh, why did she insult the man? But in there, I told the president of the country that, you know what? Your own government is selling this country to foreign interests. Because
I saw that. That was powerful. Yeah.
Stealing half the money that we collect, actually more than half the money we collect in domestic taxes. That means we have to borrow. I told the president of the country that justice does not work. What did he say? He said, make money and then you will maneuver. But you know what? So-called activists went up. You think you can't insult the man. First, the man has aura. The people who say I insult the man when they leave president, they'll panic. I was so cold. Yeah. I talked to him respectfully. He deserves respect. He's as smart as it comes. You don't hold a country at the center of the Great Lakes region. This is the tinderbox. You don't hold this together for 40 years and think you do it by chance.
40 years in
That's
the
one thing I've
book.
never understood about. I've never understood this about his critics. His critics aren't willing to grant that this guy does have some core competencies in certain areas that allows him to be able to do what he's done for all these years. They're just convinced he's a bumbling idiot, a bumbling buffoon who can't do 1+1. And I mean, that such an assumption only will cause you problems because it causes you to underestimate your opponent. Like, if you have any serious intentions of dealing with Museveni, like, you better assume that he is seriously competent and intelligent, and so that you can level up your game and come up with strategies to either counter his messaging or his like, do you know what I mean? You have to operate at his level, otherwise he's going to continue to run circles around you and rule the country for another 30 years.
Yeah,
You just don't get it.
The fastest way to lose a battle is to underestimate your opponent. And I see people do the same thing to the president's son. I mean, admittedly, he twists some scandalous stuff, but he's intelligent. He's extremely intelligent. So guys, underestimating him, the same thing they've done for his part. Respect the office, respect the man who has held this thing together for all this time, then challenge him. But when I tell guys that you guys don't know what you're talking about, like, okay, let's have a conversation between your guy and this guy on policy, and let's see who gets away. Who wins that thing? The man will be debated under the table. It will be so embarrassing. You can only say Museveni again there for long. The man is 83.
So,
biology can take care of business.
No.
And then, God forbid, then what? So your entire campaign has no leg to stand on?
So
Is that
maybe I think you mentioned this earlier, where you felt journalists had sort of fallen short in rising to the occasion to be able to challenge opposition candidates on these questions.
Yes.
Really, they should challenge all candidates, but in particular, whenever they get a chance to speak to an opposition candidate, the conversation mostly steers into something about persecution, human rights. Basically, it ends up with these bubbles of cliches about rule of law and which we've heard a million times. And I've very rarely ever heard a political candidate on the opposition be interrogated specifically on their policy agenda, where they'll pull out their manifesto and say, you want to do this by this year. How are you going to do this? From where shall you get the money from? How shall you marshal this legislative support? Maybe they've taken place, but I've not seen it.
Nothing.
Have you?
No, they never avail themselves to journalists. Challenge them to come to your point.
Wait. So is it the fault of is it that the politicians avoid those conversations, or is it that the journalists don't ask those questions?
The level of journalism in this country has gone down. There's like a handful of journalists that will get into the nitty-gritties of policy conversations. The likes of Angelo Izama, even Mwenda, are out of the game. So who is left? There's a few.
The sensationalists who are looking for a viral moment.
Soundbite. Social media is running the game. The dog is being wagged by its tail. So that means also the political class that we have, the ones that we look up to, can no longer inspire any confidence. I want you to go. And even the NRM has played to it. They are playing to it. I want you to go and run a comparison of President Museveni's cabinet in 1986 and then keep moving with it over the years and look at the level of intellect of the person in that cabinet. You will cry. There's been a progressive dumbing down of society. We need to recenter that. We need to get back.
Oh, gosh.
There's been a progressive dumbing down of society. We need to get back our country and say, you know what? Intellectualism cannot yield.
Sometimes I look at our prime minister sometimes and I just
give a disaster, an unmitigated disaster. My goodness, I feel like I need to clean my mouth.
like, what the
the prime minister.
I'm like, what the hell? What is this
Bruh,
even?
it-
The
You're right.
disaster,
No, I mean,
the aftermath
coming
of
from
Chichen.
coming from Samson Chiseka, Apollon Sibambi, I mean, Cosmas Adiep, coming from such heavyweights, and then you,
We've gotten off so bad. And then
yeah,
you look at the incoming prime minister in the new government, Chairman Yang. I was like, dude, line up. Okay, just line up for me, your economic advisors at NUP. Let me see your guide. Go to TV Network. Let me see them come to James O'Neill. Let me see them go to all these guys and participate in the public square, like in the public exchange of ideas. Let's see a new future. I'm telling you, actually, if NRM was uh, very organized, after President Museveni wins in January, they could simply find a bunch of young people like that lady in Vura, Charity, young, smart, can talk a good game, and flood the national conversation with those kind of kids and say, look, guys, the future is yellow, but the future is going to be young and the future is going to be good. That will be the kind of transition that we now want. You're going to render these other guys useless. They're going to become passengers. As long as they're not advancing ideas, they're go-to things, it's insults and whatever. Eventually, the noise will die down and a new breed of leaders is going to emerge. That is my hope. Or we can have a third fourth that unified both NRM and NUP and DP and whatever and say, look, guys, we're coming back into this thing and we want a new society, a new deal.